All right, so get this. This deep dive, it's a wild one. We're going down a rabbit hole thanks to you guys. You sent in this YouTube video, and it's about, well, hold on tight. It's about math and philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, it even brings up some pretty big questions about, like, the entire universe and maybe, just maybe, a little bit about, God.
Yeah, it's quite the heady mix, but that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, don't you think?
Right. The video actually tried to argue that, like, mathematical proofs, especially these things called fractals, you familiar with those?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so the video claims that fractals could be evidence for the existence of God. I know.
Uh-huh.
I know, it sounds a little out there. But trust me, it gets pretty interesting. What about you? What hooked you on this one? The math? The philosophy? Or maybe the sheer, I don't know, audacity of it all?
I think it's the idea that something like math, something that seems so abstract, something that we created, that it could actually point to something bigger than us, something beyond what we normally think about when we think about the universe.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. The video spends a lot of time on this thing called the Mandelbrot set. Now, full disclosure, when I first saw that, I was like, uh-oh, here comes a math lesson. But it turns out this is no ordinary equation.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not just some dry formula. The Mandelbrot set is really more like it's a visual thing, a visual representation of a mathematical process that creates these unbelievably intricate and infinitely complex images.
Infinitely complex. Wait, hold on. Can you explain that a bit more? I'm
Okay.
picturing like those spirograph drawings we used to do as kids, but like on a cosmic scale or something.
That's actually a great analogy. Imagine you've got this giant map, right? And every time you zoom in on any section of it, you find the same level of detail, the same complexity as the original map. That's what makes the Mandelbrot set a fractal. The patterns repeat at smaller and smaller scales forever, infinitely.
So you're saying if I zoomed in on like the edge of Mandelbrot image, I wouldn't just see like pixels or a blurry mess. I'd see another like full image.
Exactly. And if you zoomed in on that image, you'd find those same patterns again and again and again. It never ends. It's like those Russian nesting dolls of mathematical beauty.
Wow, that's kind of mind-boggling. Okay, but how does this all connect to, well, the real world? Like, what's the link?
That's where it gets really interesting. These fractal patterns, they're not just stuck in some like abstract mathematical realm. The video argues that we see echoes of them everywhere, all over in nature.
Wait, so those Mandelbrot images, they have counterparts out there in the real world. Give me some examples. Like, what are we talking about here?
Think of a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
The shape, it's all jagged, or the way a fern branches out, or even, get this, the spiral structure of an entire galaxy. They're all approximations of fractal patterns.
Hold on. So you're telling me that like a tiny little fern frond is somehow mirroring the shape of a massive spiral galaxy? I don't even know what to say. That's wild.
And that's exactly the point the video is trying to make. You see, these things, they might seem random, even chaotic, but they actually show this underlying mathematical order, a hidden structure. And the video argues that this order, this mathematical beauty, it's not just a coincidence. It's pointing to something deeper.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. So the video is saying that this order, this like mathematical beauty, it's not random. It's evidence of a design. Maybe even like a divine intelligence, a grand plan.
Exactly. They're asking, if math is something that comes from the human mind, and the universe is clearly governed by mathematical laws, then where did those laws come from before there were any humans? Whose mind were they in?
So it's like you bake this amazing cake and everyone is saying, wow, who wrote this recipe? And their answer is, well, maybe it was a divine baker. I could see how that'd be pretty appealing, especially if you're already thinking about, things beyond the physical world.
Yeah, it's definitely a compelling argument. But before we jump to any conclusions, I think it's worth, unpacking some of these big ideas a bit more, exploring them.
Totally. Let's break it down. First off, they keep saying math is a product of the human mind. But isn't math like universal? I mean, it's not like we just made it up, right? It's describing something real, something fundamental about how the universe works.
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of a huge debate about mathematics. Is math something we discover, something that exists whether we're here or not? Or is it something we invented, a system we made up to try to understand the world around us?
So is math like a language that's already out there just waiting for us to learn it? Or is it more like a tool that we built to try to make sense of things?
Well, the video definitely leans towards the first idea. They're saying that the fact that math is so incredibly good at describing the universe, that suggests it's more than just a human invention. They even brought up this idea from physics. It's called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that. Isn't that the idea that math is almost too good at explaining the universe? Like, it's kind of spooky how accurately it can predict stuff.
Exactly. There was this physicist, Eugene Wigner. He won a Nobel Prize, and he's the one who came up with that phrase. He was basically blown away by how math, which seems like this abstract thing that comes from our minds, could so perfectly describe and predict things that exist totally independent of us.
So even a brilliant scientist like this guy, Wigner, was baffled by how well math works. Man, that makes me want to dig into this unreasonable effectiveness thing a lot more.
Oh, it's definitely worth exploring because for some people, like the creators of this video you sent us, this unreasonable effectiveness, it's a hint, a hint that maybe math is something more, something profound, maybe even a glimpse into the mind of a creator.
Okay, yeah, I'm officially intrigued now. We've got these mind-blowing fractal patterns that are somehow reflected in the natural world. And we've got this idea that math itself might be more than just something humans came up with. Maybe it's a window into something bigger than us. This is getting deep.
It is. And we've really just scratched the surface. Let's see where this rabbit hole takes us. So we've talked about math, especially these fractal patterns and how they seem to be, deeply connected to the universe. But the video, it doesn't stop there. It takes this idea and runs with it and starts talking about what it all means for how we understand, well, beauty itself.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about connecting math and beauty. To me, math was always more about logic, solving problems, not so much aesthetics.
Yeah, that's a common way to think about it for sure. But the video makes a pretty good argument that beauty is actually a big part of math. Like it's baked right in, especially when you're talking about fractals.
Okay, so how do they make that case? I'm curious.
Well, they start by talking about how visually fractals are beautiful. Like
Oh.
those images of the Mandelbrot set, they're just stunning. But they're saying it's not just, surface level beauty, it's not subjective. They're arguing that it's built into the math itself, even if you like took away all the colors and just looked at the patterns in black and white.
So they're saying it's not just in the eye of the beholder, it's like inherent to the math.
Exactly. They use this analogy. They talk about food. They're like, color might make a fractal look even better, just like spices can make food taste better. But the underlying beauty, just like the taste of the food itself, is already there, whether we perceive it or not.
Oh, I like that. Makes me think about like a perfect piece of fruit, how it's beautiful even before you take a bite.
Exactly. And to really drive the point home, they point out that the Mandelbrot set, like, humans didn't design that to be beautiful. It was a discovery, a genuine mathematical discovery. It even surprised the guy who discovered it, Benoit Mandelbrot.
So those patterns, they just emerged naturally from the math. Like he stumbled on this treasure trove of beauty that was already there.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And the video goes on to say that the beauty of fractals, it's not just visual, it's conceptual too. It's in the elegance of the math, how these simple rules can create such incredibly complex patterns. And those deep mathematical truths, things like infinity, self-similarity, even recursion, they're all part of these structures.
Wait, recursion? What was that again? I feel like I'm back in high school math, about to get called up to the board.
No worries. It's basically the idea of something repeating within itself, like those Russian nesting dolls we talked about,
Yeah.
or how a mirror can reflect another mirror and you get that like infinite reflection going on.
Okay, I see. So it's like a pattern repeating itself, but at different levels.
Yeah.
And that's connected to the beauty of fractals somehow.
Yep. Think of a tree. The trunk branches out, and those branches branch out, and so on. Same pattern, just at smaller and smaller scales. That's recursion.
Wow, that's so true. I never really thought about a tree that way. Okay, so we've got this idea that fractals are beautiful, both visually and like in a concept way, and that maybe it's not just us, maybe it's an objective thing. But how does this connect to the whole divine mind question?
Well, the video says that beauty, like by its very nature, needs someone to see it, to perceive it. So for something to be beautiful, there's got to be a mind that can appreciate that beauty.
Oh, I see. So if these fractal patterns were around long before humans and they have this like inherent beauty to them, then, well, logically there had to be some other mind around to see them, to appreciate them.
That's exactly the argument they're making. The fact that there's this beauty in these mathematical structures and they existed before us humans, that points towards a mind, they say, that's beyond us, that transcends us. A mind that could appreciate, like, the Mandelbrot that way before we humans even knew it existed.
That is a pretty intriguing thought. It's like saying that a sunset wasn't any less beautiful just because, no humans were around millions of years ago to see it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain poetry to that, I guess.
Right. And it kind of forces us to think about our place in the universe in a new way, to consider that there might be other minds out there, maybe minds that are way more vast than ours, that see beauty in ways we can't even fathom.
But wait, hold on a sec. What about all the chaos, the ugliness in the world? Wars, natural disasters, all the bad stuff. If there's this, like, divine mathematician behind it all, why isn't everything perfectly beautiful and symmetrical?
That's a really good point, and I think the video does maybe focus a little too much on the beauty and order in the universe, and not enough on the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of messiness and randomness, too.
Right. Like looking at a perfectly formed snowflake and ignoring the whole blizzard going on around it.
Exactly, and it brings up another counter-argument. The video is really relying on the idea that the universe follows these strict mathematical laws, but some people would say that those laws are just things we made up, models that we've created because we want to understand a world that might be totally chaotic at its core, unpredictable.
So maybe math isn't the language of God. Maybe it's the language of humans trying to understand God's creation. We see patterns. We try to fit them into these neat little formulas, but maybe reality is way more complex than that.
That's definitely a possibility, and we always have to remember that what we know about math and physics, it's always changing, always evolving. What we think is an absolute law today could be proven wrong tomorrow, as we learn more.
Yeah, that's a humbling thought. It makes you realize that we're still just figuring things out.
Yeah.
And there might be deeper, more fundamental laws out there that we haven't even discovered yet.
Absolutely. And that's what makes science and exploration so exciting. It's a never-ending journey, a constant push to learn more, to see further.
So even if this video's take on math and beauty isn't the whole story, it definitely made us ask some interesting questions and think about the universe in a new way, right?
For sure. And I think that's the mark of a good deep dive. It expands our horizons, it makes us question what we think we know, and it inspires us to see the world with a fresh perspective.
Okay, so we've been on quite a journey, exploring some pretty big, profound ideas about math, beauty, and, the possibility that there's some divine mind behind it all. But it's important to remember, this is a deep dive, not like a leap of faith or anything. We're here to just explore, not to tell anyone what to believe.
Right, exactly. The video, it's presenting one interpretation, one way to connect those dots between, math and spirituality. But that doesn't mean it's the only way or even the quote-unquote right way.
Yeah, and honestly, that's part of what makes this whole thing so fascinating. Like, there's no answer key to the universe, right? It's about asking the questions, looking at things from different angles, and ultimately you got to come to your own conclusions.
I agree. And I think that's one of the biggest things we can take away from all this. Math, even with all its precision and logic, it can still lead us to these huge mysteries, these open-ended questions.
So where does that leave you, our listener? What do you think? What parts of this really resonated with you?
Do you find yourself, leaning towards the idea that math, with its beauty and precision, is pointing to something bigger, some cosmic intelligence that shaped the universe?
Or do you see math more as a tool, a neutral way to describe and understand the world, but not necessarily proof of a divine mind?
Maybe you're somewhere in between, or maybe you have a totally different take on all this. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Hit us up on social media, shoot us an email. You can even leave a comment on the show notes. We love hearing from our fellow deep divers.
And remember, we weren't trying to, force a belief system on anyone. It was about opening up your mind, getting you thinking.
It's about seeing the world, even the familiar stuff, in a new way, with curiosity and wonder.
Who knows? Maybe you'll start noticing fractal patterns everywhere. Like in the veins of a leaf, the branches of a tree, even the clouds.
Or hey, maybe the next time you're doing your budget, you'll find yourself thinking about the mysteries of math, like in a whole new way.
Whatever you take away from this, we hope it sparked your imagination, and maybe, just maybe, it left you with more questions than answers.
Because at the end of the day, it's the questions that keep us going, keep us learning, keep us pushing the boundaries right.
So keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep sending us those deep dive requests. Until next time, happy diving, everyone.
See you on the next deep dive.